And I can't wait for this Butaev versus Stanionis fight. So now let's get into Cruz versus Yuriorkis Gamboa. Cruz is 22 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. And Yuriorkis Gamboa is 30 wins and 4 losses. Gamboa is a former featherweight champion. He actually had unified 2 of the belts, the WBA and the IBF belts, in the best of his heyday. He was beating the likes of Orlando Salido to unify 2 of the belts. He had retained the WBA regular featherweight title for the 4 fights prior to that, and he has since, lost to Terrence Crawford in 2014, where he had hurt Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford had to rally back and knock Gamboa out in the 9th round. At the time, that was Crawford's best win. Then a couple years after that, he being Gamboa, lost to Robinson Castellanos. That was 2017. That was probably his worst loss, just in terms of, I thought he was going to retire around that point, because he had actually kind of quit on the stool in that fight against Castellanos. He was a heavy favorite over Castellanos. Castellanos started to drop him, started to muddy waters, make it a difficult fight. Gamboa started to get caught cleanly. Just looked like he wanted out of there at a certain point. So that was his loss in 2017. And then most recently, he's got 2 back-to-back losses against Gervonta Davis and against Devin Haney. Both of these took place at lightweight, a division that I don't think Gamboa has much business in. Again, he was at his best down at featherweight, and he's fighting like these young 130, 135 guys. I just don't think that's the best for Gamboa. Well, this fight against Cruz is also going to take place at 135. And Gamboa hasn't fought since losing to Devin Haney in a fight where Haney won just about every round. This was in November 2020. And Gamboa hasn't fought since, so he's been inactive. He's 40 years old, the former Olympic gold medalist is. And by the way, he had won that gold medal down at flyweight back in 2004 in Athens, Greece Olympics. Now, before Gamboa's most recent fight in November 2020 against Devin Haney, where again, he lost just about every round, he actually fought a pretty competitive fight against Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis was winning most of the rounds, but Gamboa was having some moments boxing-wise. Davis ended up stopping Gamboa in the 12th round, and Gamboa reportedly had torn his Achilles in that fight. But a lot of people were questioning how bad of an Achilles tear was it if he was back in the ring against Devin Haney in November 2020. I'm not going to question it too much. I think maybe when Gamboa fought Devin Haney, he might have still been recovering somewhat from that Achilles tear. Who knows? Well, he's had a lot of time off since, so now he's going to return to the ring against Cruz, who a couple years ago nobody really knew about. It was Cruz's wins over Diego Magdaleno, who he knocked out in the first round, and then he had a decision win against Jose Romero in March of 2021, and then Cruz beat Francisco Vargas via unanimous decision. Francisco Vargas, we've seen fight legendary fights against Orlando Salido, just one of those blood and guts type fighters. Cruz beat him via unanimous decision, and he kind of built the reputation on those last couple fights before he fought Gervonta Davis, which even further kind of built his reputation in a way. But Cruz is a very young fighter. He's a very short fighter, about 5'4". Gamboa is a short fighter himself, especially for the lightweight division, but he is 5'5". So this is a rare case where Gamboa is going to be the taller fighter in the ring, especially in recent years for Gamboa. Well, Cruz is 5'4", crouches even lower to the point where when he fought Gervonta Davis, basically hurt his hand where he wasn't able to throw his left hand for the last few rounds of the fight, was basically trying to box for survival, not because he was about to get knocked out, but because his tools were compromised. A lot of people thought that Cruz beat Gervonta Davis. I thought Gervonta Davis did enough to win like 7 rounds to 5 or maybe even 8 rounds to 4. But I certainly thought Gervonta Davis won that fight. He, started to kind of solve for Cruz's style match difficulty, which again is a low crouch, and he likes to explode upward with a lot of power punches. So as Gervonta Davis was kind of punching down with his left hand, he was hitting a lot of the top of Cruz's head, which is probably by design for Cruz's style, to kind of lower your head so the guy's punching a lot of that. I saw Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, recently when he fought Murata, kind of lower his head when Murata would jump into the right hand that he loves to throw. It looks like Triple G likes to do that, kind of lower the head thing, so you hit here and not so much here. Isaac Cruz, his style kind of worked against Gervonta Davis, even though Gervonta Davis started to find opportunities to kind of let the left uppercut go. But angles-wise, it seemed like it was something that Gervonta Davis wasn't used to seeing, a shorter fighter, as opposed to the guys who Gervonta Davis usually explodes upward against and finds their chin a lot more easily. But again, I thought Gervonta Davis controlled like basically from round 3, 4, all the way on to maybe 7, 8, 9, and then that's when Gervonta Davis apparently, he was wincing like in the corner. I wasn't sure if it was a shoulder issue, elbow, hand, but it turned out to be the hand. I don't think it was ever diagnosed as a broken hand, but if you're watching the fight, you saw that Gervonta Davis was no longer throwing the signature left hand. So how else can you really diagnose it other than something happened to the hand? I don't know what it was, but he stopped throwing it altogether. So that's why he edged a decision win versus cruising to like a 9 rounds to 3 type of win. Or even worse, I mean, he might have stopped Isaac Cruz if he didn't hurt. We don't know. But I know that that last few rounds was not the best of Gervonta Davis. But Isaac Cruz, his reputation grew because he went the distance with a guy who barely anybody ever goes the distance with in Tank Davis. So what do I expect out of Isaac Cruz versus Yuriorkis Gamboa? Again, I don't love that Gamboa is 40 years old in the ring against a 23-year-old. Isaac Cruz, I don't love that he's been inactive for the past year and a half, whereas Isaac Cruz fought 3 times in 2021, twice in 2020, twice in 2019, like 5 times in 2018. Isaac Cruz is a very active fighter. Gamboa, fought once in 2020, twice in 2019, once in 2018, hasn't been nearly as active. Now, Gamboa, I actually expect to win a couple, maybe 2 out of the first 3 early rounds because he's just one of those blessed punchers when it comes to the hand speed. He was one of those guys who you see him fight, he's able to kind of sit back and be patient, and he was so damn athletic that whenever he wanted, he could just jump in and whip with a psh, 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 where it's like blinding fast. Like there's certain fighters who have that special type of hand speed. Think Gary Russell Jr., think Zab Judah, think Shane Mosley. Certain guys are visibly fast where you blink and it's like, damn, what was that? Yuriorkis Gamboa has some of that must-see type of hand speed. But then he became a little bit too reluctant to let his hands go, as is, basically after that reign at featherweight. Once he started going up, he had inactivity even before losing to Terrence Crawford in 2014. So his activity level dipped like a long time ago. And then he started to take more time off, got back on the bike in like 2017, where he fought like 4 times in 2017. But then his output was a lot more spotty after that. But he, again, has had to manage his energy a lot more to the point where it's led to more boring fights in more recent years because you're waiting for him to let his hands go. But he looks like he's more content with just throwing a jab, moving around the ring, kind of adjusting his trunks, kind of, taking pictures, as they say, against his opponent, where you want to see a little bit more fireworks. So I think Gamboa has the hand speed to kind of spark Isaac Cruz early and win a couple of the early rounds. But I think that it's inevitable that as the fight continues, Isaac Cruz is somebody who's just nonstop coming forward, pressure, 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 letting both hands go, seemingly unconcerned with getting hit himself, basically take 1 to give 3, take 2 to give 5, that type of a fighter. I don't think that Gamboa is going to be able to withstand that continued onslaught against Isaac Cruz. 1, because he just doesn't have the volume to match. So when it comes to round winning, I think that he's going to win a couple of the early ones, but I think he's going to be having difficulty in winning rounds in the middle rounds. And if he's not able to keep throwing enough punches to keep Isaac Cruz off of him, then it's going to look like Gamboa is either running or if he stays in the pocket, I think he's going to very likely get hurt against Isaac Cruz to where he's going to have to hold, might get dropped, something like that. So by the late rounds, and this is, by the way, scheduled for 10 rounds, not 12, which I think is good news for Gamboa. I think that if this was a 12-rounder, I would probably go Isaac Cruz, maybe via late stoppage. But since it's a 10-rounder, I think Gamboa has enough craft, has enough wit, has enough survival skills to make it the 10-round distance and will instead lose via decision. Probably unanimous decision after, again, winning a couple of the rounds. I think that is ultimately going to be a unanimous decision win for Isaac Cruz. The question is, if Isaac Cruz does pass this test and gets by Gamboa, who, again, super experienced, again, former gold medalist, again, former 2-division champ. You could even say that it was a 3-division champ, but out of those 3 divisions, I only consider one to be legit, just the one down at featherweight. Everything else from his win at 130 and 135 belts-wise was like an interim belt. I don't really count that as being an actual champion, but super experienced, and I think that he's going to do enough to survive the 10-round distance, maybe even conduct himself well in a couple of the middle or even late rounds to where he shows some flashes, shows that, hey, I'm still in this thing, even though his volume is going to make it easy to score more of the rounds for Isaac Cruz. So yeah, let me know what you think about Isaac Cruz versus Yuriorkis Gamboa. Let me know what you think about Bout versus Staniotis. Again, I love that this, undercard fight has some very interesting matchups, especially Bout versus Staniotis. But again, if Isaac Cruz gets by Gamboa, where do you think they place him next? The issue with PBC at 135, unlike 147, where they hold over 90% of the elite talent, Isaac Cruz is going to be I think there's going to be some trouble in matchmaking for Cruz because the roster isn't deep at PBC in the 135 or even 130 or even 140 pound divisions. It's going to be interesting to see how they matchmake with Isaac Cruz going forward. But yeah, let me know what you think about this Spence versus Ugas undercard in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.